Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Okay, so last class we did a lot of example with the nested loop. So again, nested loop have the outer loop involved with action that have inner loop. And we know that things that done once, we will put it in outside of the loop since it's not a repeat action. And since that will get done a few times, it will be part of the outer loop, and things that done many times will be part of the inner loop, right? Since it will, you will do it over and over again. Now, here is kind of a template for when you're trying to print like a figure. So normally we'll have the outer loop represent the row. Now, if you store your counter from 1 up to number of rows, then that means you will print you will have number of rows. And if you have your inner for loop start from 1 up to column, then that will run it a number of column times. Now in the inner for loop, normally you will tell C++ what you're gonna print, right? So if you just print star, right, every time you go into the loop, you print a star, then you will get like a square or rectangle kind of shape. Or like last class we did things like we will print on either a star or space, right, to design different shape. So then that will involve like some question, right? So you will have question based on the counter, like let's say R or the C, and you will know when to print maybe stars and when to print the space, right? So you will have like a if statement to decide what you want to print. Now, normally after the inner for loop, you will have a line in the out loop, right? Notice that this CLN line is part of the out loop, but it's not in the inner loop. Since you will, after you print the whole line, you will need to move on to the new line. And that's where you do the end line. And the last example we did, we also say that if right, you need like a second counter just to help you figure out like the shape, right, to print the figure easier, you can also have like an additional counter to help you. Now, let's say you want to print this triangle. Okay, so how do we print it? Well, so if you look at this picture, well, we know this picture has 5 rows. And in the first row, they have 1 star. Second row, it have 3 stars. And third row, it has 5 stars. Fourth row, it have 7 stars. And then the fifth row, it have 9 stars.
So it's 2 times R minus 1.
Yes, but if we look at that, right, we print the first row, right? For the first row, this star we print it at the center. Do you see that we print this star at the center?
Yeah.
So we will have some space before we print the star, right? So we know what get prints many times here. Will be stars in the space. And what get printed a few times is the end line again, right? Every time we print a line, you need to move on to the next line. And then what get printed once is you will terminate the program. Now, how do we know when do we print the star and when do we print the space? Well, so if you look at it here, we have C equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so for the first row, we print the star when C equals to 5. And then for the second row, we start printing the star when C equals to 4, and then we end it when C equals to 6. So we print the star when C equals to 4, 5, and 6. And then for the third row, we will print the star starting at when C equals to 3 and end it at 7. And for the fourth row, we will start at 2 and end it at 8. And when R equals to 5, we will start at 1 and then end it at 9. You see here we started at 5 and we ended at 5. For second row, we started at 4, we ended at 6. And then at the third row, we started
Professor, when is our first exam?
the first exam will be next Thursday, so a week from today.
Okay, thank you. For the exam questions, are they multiple choice or I have to write out code?
You need to write out codes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Wait, I thought the exam was on the 14th.
That's for the lab, isn't it? Or
Let me check the syllabus.
I thought it was October 14th.
Yes, your your first exam is on October 14th. So 2 weeks from 2 weeks from today.
So the 14th, he said?
Yes.
The exam is going to be on October 14th or next week?
On the syllabus, it says on the 14th, so 2 weeks from today.
Okay, all right.
It involves like writing code, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The exam is during the class. So during the class time.
It doesn't involve like any text editor questions like Vim or Emacs or something.
No,
Okay,
everything will be on Blackboard.
just C++.
Yes.
Okay,
So you will write your code on a text box and you can't use any editor. You just put your code directly in the text box.
okay.
Professor,
Yes.
so it's similar to the lab quiz?
I don't
How we write the code on the lab quiz?
I don't know what kind of question lab instructor give you. So mainly you will have your question answered in Blackboard, and in the Blackboard there will be a text box for you to put your code in.
How long will we have for the test?
It's the
2 weeks.
class length.
Oh,
Say it one more time, I didn't hear you.
Basically how long the class is.
Oh, okay, alright.
Will we have like a compiler so we could test if it works, or is it just like
No,
We won't-
you won't have a compiler. Will just directly put your code in the text box.
so we
So
won't be
only-
able to test it?
No, you won't be tested.
Is it all chapters?
So we're not allowed to test our code
No.
or, okay.
Okay, so we will talk more about the exam next week. Okay, so if we go back to this picture here, right, so we want to print this triangle. Right, so the first row we want to print only one star, but the star will add position when c equals to 5. And for the second row, you want to print the star that start at position 4 and they end at position 6. And then for the third row, you want to start at 3, end at 7. And for the fourth row, you want to start at 2, end at 8. And for the fifth row, the last row, you will start at position 1, then end at position 9. Now I see people say, oh, it will be easier, right, if we just start at 5 and then going down to 1. So if we're counting from 5 to 1, what does that give us? Right, it will pretty much tell us where we start printing the star. Now, what else will it help? So since we know we will print this triangle, this involved a nested loop. Right, and it will be start if we start counting them from 5 to 1. So I will just set out the counter, just call it S. And I will start it with the 5. And then what? What else do we need here? But besides that we starting position, we can have from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We should also have the end position. Right, so if you look at the end position, the first row, we will end at 5, the second row will end at 6, For the third, we'll end at 7, 8, and 9. So we can declare two variables here, right? One will tell us where is the starting position and the ending position. So we can declare E starting from 5. And then for the testing, you can you just need to choose one variable for your testing, right? So you either choose the S and E, and the goal is to do this 5 times. So if you choose to do the question on S, then you know S will going from 5 down to 1. So when S is greater or equals to 1, you want to run it. And you will change the S by subtracting 1 each time since it's going down. And for E, you will increment it by 1 each time. So you have E plus plus.
Professor, so in the for, that's the for loop, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you write int SE, so you're simultaneously declaring a variable as integer for all of
Yes.
them?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is when you need to declare multiple variable at the same time. Like we probably did this the second or third class. When you're trying to declare multiple variable with the same data type, you can just put them in one line, right? You don't need to have separate line to declare like int S, int E. You can have all, you can have it with one instruction and then put them all in the same line. Now for the column, right, we will always starting from 1 up to 9. So C will go in from 1 up to 9. And then C will just increase by 1 since you are counting it from 1 up to 9. Now we need to determine what we're going to print. Are we printing a star or are we printing a space? So we know if your C is in between the S and the E, you will print a star. So if your C is greater or equals to, right, including the S, and not only it need to be greater than S, it also need to be less than or equals to E, the ending position, then you will print a star. Otherwise, you have an else, you will print a space. And once we have the inner for loop, we need to end the line and finish our nested loop. Then our program will end here, then we can return 0. So if we put the code in, we will declare S and E. And then for the question, we were just testing on S, and we'll make sure S is greater or equal to 1, right? Since we want to count S starting from 5 and end at 1. And S will decrease by 1 each time, and E will increment it by 1 each time. And now we know if C is greater or equals to S, and C is less than or equals to the ending position, we will print a star. Else, we will print a space. And we will finish our code here. Then we get this triangle here. Any questions here?
Will we have a study sheet for the test?
Okay, anything related to the exam question, save it at the end of the class.
For this question, can we also do for the second for loop, the inner for loop, C is less than or equal to E, and then we don't have to have that extra condition in the if statement?
Okay, so if you look at it, right, we need the if statement because you need to know when to print the star and when to print the space. Because if you just end it when C is less than or equals to E, then it will end when you finish printing the star. But before you print the star, you still need to determine whether you want to print the space or the star because there are also space here.
Okay, so you need the spaces after the star too?
Yes. So what you could do is that if you want to change the C to C is less than or equals to the E, that's fine. Right. So it won't print the actual space here. Right. So pretty much
Yeah.
each line will end there at when you print the last star. You will get the same figure.
So Professor, I see in your code, can you go back to the star in the PowerPoint? Yeah, can you scroll up? Okay, so I see you made rows, so 5 rows, nine columns. So you have S, which would go from 1 to 5. That would make the stars, and every other space would be spaces. And then you have, am I making sense? Do you understand what I'm asking? So you have the S goes up to the top star, and then from then you have the E. So the E goes from 5 to 9, but in the code, I'm having trouble finding where you put in E, because you put E equals 5.
Yes. So remember, right, when we print it or when we run the program, it goes from top down. So
it goes from, so when you write the code, it goes from top to down.
Yeah, so it will run but it will print your figure from top down. Right, so it will print the first row and then the second row.
Okay.
So for your first row, your S start at 5. E also start at 5.
Oh.
So
Okay.
starting position is going from 5 down to 1, where the end position will start at 5 and then go up to 9.
Okay, so I see where you put S minus minus. That's why you put minus.
Yes,
And
where
then you
E
put
will go up.
E plus. Oh, wow. Okay.
You see here, they both start at 5, since when your R equals to 1, you're only printing 1 star.
Okay, and so then in the code, do you have to put, does it matter which code you put first, S or E? when you're
No.
putting the code? No,
You just
same.
you just declaring the variable, so it doesn't matter which variable you're declaring first.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad I asked.
Okay, I see people asking when it's less than equals to. Okay, so here, when we want to print the star, when you see it's greater or equals to the s, and then it will need to be less than or equal to e. Since you want to print star, when c is in between the value of s and e, so your c need to be greater or equal to s, the starting point, and you need to be smaller than or equals to the e, the ending point.
So could you also do it like if c is less than s, print the space? Sorry, if c is less than s or greater than e, print the space. Otherwise, print the star.
Yes.
Okay.
Then you need to be then you have when c is strictly less than s, or c will be strictly greater than e, and then your conjunction, your relation here, it need to be disjunction. It need to be or relation here.
Okay.
I see people asking, how many space do you count? What do you mean, how many space do you count? Okay, so if you look at it here, right, we print the star at the center, right? So we start at 5. So you have 5 row, so you will print the star at position 5. And then anywhere else is a space. So you need space get you to the position when c equals to 5. Okay, then we will move on. Now let's say you want to print this 8x8 checkerboard kind of pattern. So you have the X and then the O. So how can we print it?
I guess you could check if the index is odd or even.
Okay, so
You would probably just increment the for loop by 2 instead of 1.
but if you increment that by 2, how do we print?
You can have the x's start at 0 and then increment them by 2, and then have the o's start at 1 and then increment it by 2.
But you gotta check the end of the line. Make sure you gotta be careful with that.
Okay, so if you look at this figure, we have, it's 8x8, so we have 8 row here. And 8 columns here. So if we start from index row 1, row 2, up to r equals to 8. And from column 1, column 2, up to c equals to 8. So this figure, pretty much at every index, you will print something. Right, you will either print a X or you will print a O. So to set up the for loop, it's just like how you print the square before.
So you do it like if r plus c is even, then you print an x.
That's when we determine we will want to print a X or we want to print the O. But to set up the for loop is the same as how you set up the squared.
Okay.
Right, so your R will be just, you will start from R equals to 1, and then R will be less than or equals to 8, R plus plus. And for the inner loop, well, when C equals to 1, C less than equals to 8, and C plus plus. Now, once you get into the loop, where we will have an if statement to determine we either want to print a star or a O. So this is where we need to figure out what shape we need to print. Now, if you look at that, when do we print a X and when do we print a O? Now, if you say when all odd, we will print X. So if you look at it, right, for the first X, we have when R equals to 1, C equals 1, they both odd. Now here we have when R equals to 1, C equals to 3. Now if you look at it here, we have when R equals to 2, when C equals to 2. And then when R is even, C need to be even in order to print an X. So we know we will print an X when R is odd and when C is odd, or when R is even and C is even. Or right, for the O, we will have, if R is odd, we will print O when C is even. Now, if R is even, we'll print O when C is odd.
Isn't it easier to just look at the sum of R and C?
Yeah, we can also do that. So if you look at sum of R and C, right, since their parity matches, then when you add the sum need to be even. Right, since even plus even or R plus R both give you even. Now, if you get one R in an even, you will print an O. That means R plus C will give you R. So that's one way you can look at that. Or you can just check the parity if the parity matches. If they both even or both odd, that means when they modulo it by 2, they equal to each other. Then you will print O when they are not equal to each other. Right, so there are multiple ways you can do it. Right, so for the question here, right, we can have if R plus C, right, is even, that means you add them and then multiply by 2, and you want to check if they are even mean they equal to 0. Then we will print an X. Then we'll see our X. Otherwise, else, we will see out O. Right, so that's our inner for loop. And then we will end the line in the outer loop and finish our code here. Okay, so this is our code here. So if you look at it, it will print us the 8x8 checkboard pattern. Any questions here?
Yeah, so in the whiteboard,
Mhm.
when you draw X and O,
Mhm.
you have R odd, C odd.
Mhm.
What is that referring to?
The row number and then the column number, right? So when R and then the C are both odd, or when they are both even, you will print an X. Right, so if you look at here, you print an X, R is 8, C is 2, they both even. So when your row number and column number are both odd or both even, you will print an X. If your row number is odd and column number is even, then you will print an O.
I see.
Right, so that's what we observe and to see what we are printing. Good. Okay. Now let's say you want to write a program that will does the following. But when you run the program, you actually miss a line. Okay. So when you run your program, the following will occur. So when you run that, it will prompt a message. It will ask you to enter the square size or 0 to stop. So let's say you give an input 4. It will print you a 4x4 squared. And then it will print you the prompt again. And so you will get the same prompt and ask you to enter the square size or 0 to stop. And let's say you enter 2 this time, then it will give you a 2x2 squared. And then it will print you the prompt again. So it will give you a prompt again here. And if you enter 0, it will just stop and you will get this heading again.
Can I try to write it?
Yes.
So you can start by saying while true, then you would say C out, and then you would say enter size, enter square size or 0 to stop, and then you would C in square size, and then you would make a nested for loop. You would say for int I equals to 0, I is less than square size I plus plus, and then you would do the same thing with the for loop below it. You could say int C equals to 0, C is less than square size C plus plus, and then you would say inside the inner for loop you would say C out star, and then inside the outer for loop you would say C out end line. And then you can say on the top of the while loop, you can say if square size is equal to 0, then return 0.
Okay, so what you do there, it's fine. The thing is, you check the okay, so the point is you need to be aware of where you do the where you do the check the square size. You check the square size at the end.
Why?
Would you use like a do while loop then?
Like when you, so now I'm saying that what you do there, right? You have your let's see. So pretty much you run the program again. Like you run the program once, and then when you get this the square size, you will run the program again, and then you have the if statement to check the square size. I would say if you move that, you should move that before you print the square.
Or you can say while square size is greater than 0.
So you have to initialize it to be greater than 0 before the while loop if you're gonna do that.
You could just not give it a value, right? You could just say int square size and not give it a value.
But then it's gonna have like a garbage value in it.
It's gonna
Yeah.
say null, no?
If you don't give it a value, the value is like undefined, like you're not sure what it is. That's why you usually should set it. Is that right, Professor?
Okay, so yeah, so it's like so pretty much what you do is you need to check before you print out the square, right? If it's bad, then you will terminate the program. So what you can do is, right, so you want to, okay, so let's have the while. So we know that while the size, right, the score size. So let's say we declare the integer called size. Now we know while the size is greater than or equal to 0, you want to keep going.
Wait, don't you want to stop if it's 0?
Yes. So when it's at 0, then we'll just skip out the while loop. Then we can just terminate it there. Right? There are many ways you can write the program. So if you want to do that inside, it's fine. They will keep running and just then inside your while loop, it will have an if statement to check is your size good.
Okay.
And yes, here will be while size is strictly greater than 0. Right? So while size is greater than 0, you can let's see.
You have to read in a value from size above the loop, right?
Yeah, so if you follow the chart, like one thing is you can so if you ask once, just to start that, like you want to ask the user enter square size or 0 to stop.
Doesn't that have to be inside the while loop because you have to keep asking, no?
Yes. So let me,
It's gonna be inside and outside.
so we can do it this way. And then if the size is greater than 0, then it will go into the loop. Then what you do is you will print the squared with a 2 for loop. And while r equals to 1, r less than equals to size, r plus plus. And then for the for loop, int. So this part is just like what we did before to print the squared. And once you've done that, you will ask them again. So pretty much you will have this 2 lines of the code down here. So you will copy this down again. So I have this code twice, both inside to start it, and then every time you repeat a question, you have it inside the while loop. And then you will return 0 from here. So once it gets out of the for loop, it will stop.
Is there a way you could do this without repeating the code?
Okay, so yes, so if you want to, if you don't want to repeat the code, then you can do it inside the while loop. Now we know while there need to be like a statement there. Now we know we always want to get into the loop, right? So you know what, I will just initialize size to be 1, something that's not 0. Now I just call this like a dummy variable. Now again, here our question is again when size is greater. Oh, actually, no. Okay, so what we can do is we will have while this statement is true. So pretty much it will keep going to the for loop. And every time we go into a for loop, you will have the size and you will ask the user for the size, and then we will store it. And before you run it, you need to test its size good. So it's size greater than 0. So if size is less than or equal to 0, you want to terminate. And then you will have the for loop to print the square. So this part is the nested for loop to print you the squared. So that will do the same thing. So you will keep asking inside the while loop, but every time when you ask it, before you actually print it, you need to check. Now, if it's bad, you need to kind of force them to terminate the program, right? So this is saying if bad, return 0. So it won't keep going. It will just you will just hit return 0 and then end the program there. Good.
Yeah.
So either way is fine. So I would say depends on your experience on coding. So just do whatever that comes first to you. So if you want to just like start asking and then your question is based on the size and you will do a while statement on the size, then you can do that and you will write the program and then you need to get new size, where you need to update the input. Then you will ask again and then do it again. So there's nothing wrong that have this part repeat. Now, if you don't want to repeat the part, you will just keep going to the loop. Then you can have a while loop, which you said they're always true. That means no matter what, it will just keep going to the loop until right? So if you do while true, that means something in your code need to test, like when are you gonna stop? So this is saying like when your size is bad, then it will force you to terminate the program. But otherwise you will continue. Right, so this is depends on how you approach the question. Any questions here?
Can you go back to the top again, to the example? All right, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other question, we will end it here. And sometime next week, I will upload like a mock exam up so you know what the exam format will look like.
Will there be a practice exam?
Yes, I will post practice exam up like sometime next week.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day, Professor.
Bye, thank you, Professor.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, have a great day.
Have a good one, Professor.